is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good morning and welcome to Guardian Radio AM. Today is September 1st and it's a little after 11 o'clock in the morning. Once again, this is Cecil Newry and I shall be your host for the day as I talk about overcoming the odds and doing great things. Today, my guest supposed to be, I'm assuming that he's on his way, my guest supposed to be Karen Jaira Sloganoff. And we had an interview with him some time ago, and this is supposed to be our second interview to conclude him great things in order to be a success. And I wanted to know what he's doing now, an update. And I'm hoping to do that. Juxtaposed to that, I want to recognize, to remember that today is September 1st. And about 2-3 years ago, the hurricane? 4 years now. How time flies. 4 years ago, a devastating hurricane came past the Bahamas, through the Bahamas, and sat on Abaco and Grand Bahama. And of course, there was a tremendous loss of lives. And to this day, we still don't know how many lives were lost. It seemed to have been some type of tsunami type concept would came in and swallowed up and take live souls out to sea. We never heard from them again. It was a tremendous time. We should have learned a lot from that. I'm hoping we learned a lot from that. But that is also a testimony of strength also in overcoming the odds, because Bahamians who survive are surviving and are hopefully thriving. So I wanted to have recognized that. But today, until Karen Jaira Sloganoff comes to the studio, I tarried Erin, and she is on her way out. And I said, no, can you just wait a couple of seconds with me as I have a casual conversation about the educational system. If not the educational system, what exactly is wrong? Or what do we recommend should be happening, right? Recently, apparently, according to the news, this has been our lowest grades results for the BGCSE. I note that they didn't mention the BJC, so I'm assuming that we did pretty okay with that. But definitely we concentrated on the exit examination, right? And said that we are still struggling here and there on that. There has been calls to say scrap the entire BGCSE all together. And I said, no, that don't make no sense. This is an exit examination to determine what our children are doing. The examination is basically for, besides the evaluation in terms of what they've learned for the 3 years, is also a recognition to go into university, college, those persons who need that. And for business evaluators to say, well, I see that you are competent to be trained competently. So I think they use that for this, right? But the cries on what should we be doing, Erin, is what the conversation is going to be until Mr. Sloganoff has come. And I'll start with you directly. No pontification. What should we be doing?
Okay, so first of all, we need to sit down with social scientists and social workers, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs say you won't be able to achieve anything higher up on the pyramid unless you are able to take care of the things on the base. Shelter, safe, not just comfortable, but safe shelter, healthy and safe shelter, food, right?
I want you to stick a pin there. Why did you start from there? Because everybody have shelter, everybody have food and safe space in the Bahamas.
We assume that, but that's not the truth.
Do we have any type of information to suggest otherwise?
Yeah, man, we have information. You could go to the social services and just ask them for the number of people who've applied for assistance, right? And the reasons why they've applied for assistance. Some are applying for assistance because they're living in their cars. Some are applying for assistance because they are trying to get out of a home that's already filled with multiple people, right? The space that they're living in isn't adequate. They've lost their job short term. They get no benefits, right? Some of these young people are unfortunate enough to work for unscrupulous actors and employers who haven't been paying NIB for many, many months, right? They don't discover until they attempt to make a claim but there were no NIB payments made. And so people find themselves in this position for many reasons, but there are lots of, a number of our students are living in homes without secure housing and without food security. Not only do they not get more than one meal a day, they're never certain if they're going to get a meal a day or how they're going to eat.
Can I label all of that as distractions? That when the students should be concentrating on studying, there are major distractions that is prohibiting them from concentrating.
But don't use the word distraction, because distraction suggests that it's the child, right, that is refusing to focus. And it doesn't acknowledge that it's the environment that the child is forced to live in that renders them unable to focus.
So you're suggesting that the results may be poor because the children are unable to focus.
Right, and to focus and to study or to practice healthy and strong study culture at home. They may not have electricity in the home. They may not have a space that...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I'm just suggesting that all that, in combining, again, I'm going to use that word, distractions, something that is prohibiting them from focusing.
Right, but not a distraction, an obstacle. A distraction suggests that the child has it within them to ignore those things.
But there are people who are ignoring those things, eh?
There are some students who are able to ignore those things. Sometimes those students are able to ignore those physical obstacles because they have the psychological support of their parents. So now you have a child that has a poor living space, and then you have parents that are unable to pay attention to them because they work in 2 and 3 jobs, 4 jobs, right? Or they're absent, right? And that's not the child's fault that the parent is absent. So
let's
you combine those two things.
Let's accept that
Yeah.
as one. Mm-hmm. There are major obstacles that is preventing children from performing well.
Yeah.
Now, what it is, how do we solve that? Because right now, there are a number of Bahamians who are blaming the child, saying that that it's not the obstacles, it's the child not being
Right, it's
not
a distraction,
focused,
not obstacles.
And then there are Bahamians who are blaming the school, saying, man, it's the teachers who are, again, just use this word distraction, even though they might use the word obstacles, that's 2. And then there are people who say, no, it's not the student nor the teachers, but it's the NEP system or archaic system that is preventing these children. However, you started as your core argument first, that there are obstacles.
Yeah.
That's a completely different narrative from the 3 that I gave before.
Right. See, we often say, well, how is it that our parents had less access to technology and information than we did, but they seem to be higher performing and be better able to navigate the world around them, right? It's because for many of them, they didn't have the same obstacles, right? Everybody was in the same rough classroom, right, with no technology, but the students back then were part of a culture that had an appreciation for education. And you could see that because the people you walk in, people stop you on the street. They say, where you going? You finish your homework yet? What you doing, boy? You studying? Just small things like that, right? It's more than those students with less could perform more. So if we can enable our students and let's get them a base, right, where they have good nutrition, they're not just worried about things outside of the school space. Some kids don't know where they're going to live when they get home. Some kids leave school every day not sure where they're going to sleep.
And I accept that.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want us to pontificate about the whole idea and just moving towards solutions.
Solutions, all right.
Right?
So,
okay, but I want to say this. I grew up poor. right? Or I think I grew up poor. I had more than some because there were people in my neighborhood who were poorer than me. But I'm saying that I had a share bed. It was for 3, 4, 5 of us, right? Clapboard house, right? But I was able to get an education more than some. But all my life, I was one of the first set, if not the first, the second set to take the term BGCSEs. That's about 30 odd years ago.
Yeah, 1994, I think
Yes.
was the first year.
Yeah. Around there, 94, 93. And from then, we're at D. We've never been over a D. D is, and I'm not saying that D is a bad thing. I'm just saying that where we were. D is where we always were, right? So I hear all of these behemoths pontificating saying, oh, things are getting worse or things are getting bad, right? Things are not improving, right? And I'm saying that, but we were always here.
From what point? From 1993?
I'm just talking about from that BGC era,
the introduction of that 1994.
Now, I'm not sure with GCE because not everyone took the exam. So we could have been that prior to, right? Because only the top students took GCE. All those average students weren't allowed to take it at all, which was over 90% of the population never took no external examinations, right? So I only could assume that forever we were at this level. And we are surviving. I'm saying that it is dismal that we are not surviving, right? This is why I said that the BGCS must stay in place because we need to know if we are moving left or right or upward or downward. But it seems as if we are not moving. Why is that? Is it again because of the obstacles? Or is it something? There was a call saying that we need to change the educational system. And I said, change it to what? Said, throw out BGCSE and academics altogether. See, it sounds stupid. Eh? Say, throw out academics altogether and put everyone in trade school where they don't have to read a book at all. Because now they don't want them to read.
I can't even hear that. That's
See,
madness.
it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So when I hear people put the argument, said, oh, change it to trade school so they don't have to read, something is wrong.
You remember when there was that trend on social media? There was a video with a whole bunch of young people performing a piece where it starts off like, I don't need to know Pythagoras theorem. Like, I
Yes.
don't use Pythagoras theorem in life. Why do I need to learn it in school? And that video troubles me greatly, right? Because you live in the Bahamas. There's roughly a 4,000% markup on furniture. Beds, cabinets, things like that. You can't be a cabinet maker. You can't be a furniture's maker, producer, right? Unless you know Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras theorem. If you know that, you could make your own bed. You could make your own table. You could make your own fence. You could write a wall, write a wall. Make sure that it's perfectly vertical. These are things you could do with that, right? You don't have to go to a calculus class and become a math teacher or an aeronautics scientist. You could do that with Pythagorean theorem, but you needed to be able to build a bed, a fence, to make sure that your car is at the right angle while you're trying to go under it to fix it, to drain the oil.
A call here, and producer patched that caller through while so we can have a conversation with them. But I want to have a conversation about, again, solutions,
Yeah, we'll
right?
be moving to the
I'm moving. No, I am blaming you. I'm just saying that's why I still want to remind the audience that's what we're
That's where
doing.
we're driving to,
That's where we're
yeah.
driving to. But go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? I ain't going through. Caller, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Good morning, everybody. How
Yes,
you doing
go
today?
straight to the solution today.
Hello?
Yes, go straight to the solution today.
Straight to the...
Solution.
Now, I wanted to ask the question as to whatever happened to days when you didn't just go to high school from the junior school. You
Those
have to
days
pass
finished.
to
We ain't
go
got
to the
we
high
we
school.
ain't, oh, okay, I see where you're going. You want us to not
Hello?
do. I hear what you're saying now.
But when I went to Eastern Junior, you didn't go to the Eastern Senior unless you passed to go to Eastern Senior. If you failed in third grade to go to fourth grade, you still had to repeat. You didn't automatically be promoted to the fourth grade and go to Eastern Senior. And then when you reached Eastern Senior, then they had the common entrance exam. You didn't just go to high school to St. John's or Government High or SAC. You had to pass the system, pass or fail. You still go from Form 4 to Form 5 or grade whatever they got now.
And I agree with you, but let me comment on that. If we in a system where 90% of the population are proven that they cannot pass to go to the next class, Aaron, if we accept that as a truism, that 90, just based on the BGCSE results, of course that's ridiculous, right? If we accept it as a truism that 90% of Bahamians are unable to go to the next level for whatever reason, can you imagine the chaos if we keep on putting them back?
I don't have to imagine that because I'm living the chaos of a wholesale social promotion policy. We are currently and actively living in the results of promoting what you have estimated to be 90%. I'll be fair and say 50%.
No, it's got to be more than that.
Huh?
It can't, 50%, it has to be a majority. You know the majority is
But this is what-
struggling. 50% is not the majority.
See, the majority is struggling, but a small percentage of those people who are struggling could still make it and understand what it is they're supposed to learn in the next grade. But
I agree.
let's say between 60 and 90%, the figure you estimate, 90%. I think what we are experiencing now is a result of a decade of a social promotion policy.
You just in a decade, not 30 years, like I'm saying from 94.
I can be conservative and say just the last 10 years.
I think we're doing better now than 94.
Now we
Yeah, man, I saw the grade to 94.
Because when I went,
It was bad. It was bad. We got D then. I think it was D minus in 94. Then 5 years later, gone D plus.
Take it back 30 years. The
30 years.
point still remains. I think that what we are experiencing shows us that it's worth it to try not promoting 90% of a grade because you don't know what you could do with all these students. You have a constitutional and a statutory, an ethical and a moral duty to these young people to prepare them for the world. What's worse is you try to convince them that they are prepared for the world, knowing that you did not do sufficient work.
I come to you right now, caller, but I want to read this text, right? It says, great show as usual. Government schools should operate like private schools. Kingsway will repeat you until you're 85 years old. Now, let's say that is true. Only 500 people got 5 BGCSEs.
C or more.
Or C or more. When you put just SAC number, listen to this now. If you add all the SAC graduates, all the QC graduates, and I would throw in Kingsway graduates because the person mentioned Kingsway, that's the 500. So what about all the rest of the private schools? They are struggling. I'm assuming even Kingsway, SAC, QC are struggling, and that perhaps the majority of them got 5 or more, but there is a percentage of their numbers who aren't able to get those 5. So it's not private school versus public school, even though there is a crisis in the public school.
Well, I think there is
but the private schools are struggling also.
There is a separation, there is a demarcation within private schools, right? And you have, I don't want to say high end, but you have the more well-established private schools who have had thorough curricula and school programming that addresses holistic needs of the students and not just the academic needs. Many of these new startup schools are people who are attempting to provide a safer and what they feel is a more effective learning space and opportunity for the children. They're pulling them out of public school. Some parents are pulling their kids out of public school because of violence, right? Their kids are being targeted or there's just violence generally. The Ministry of Education now, this is systemic solutions. They need to provide a better, more enhanced and thorough oversight program for these smaller, newer private schools to ensure that they are meeting the mark. I mean, some of the things we hear anecdotally coming out of these schools suggest that they are not being managed properly. And when I say that, I'm coming with a very critical air, right? The people are sincere in the work that they do and they're trying very hard, but they don't have the resources, the infrastructure to provide a proper, accredited academic environment for students.
Before we go to the call, if what you said earlier about obstacles, we assume that public school have more obstacles than private school because they have access to the wealth.
Right, but
so clearly you cannot compare the public school to the private schools when the public schools are dealing with the obstacles that you mentioned earlier.
What the public schools have is a greater degree of oversight and administrative engagement. These private schools are kind of left to their own, right? Once you hit your yearly regulatory markers, like your accreditation thing is up, or you bring in all the teachers have been vetted. There's very little oversight that takes place, and so those schools need. The Ministry of Education needs to develop a policy and a unit to provide substantive oversight, actually have more obstacles for students than the government schools.
There you go. But let's go to this caller now. Producer Patrick caller through. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Well, good morning to Ms. Green and UCA.
Go ahead. Go ahead with your solution.
It's amazing that nobody calls with the solution, but just questions, more questions, no answers.
Just go ahead with your solution.
It's so simple to fix this. But before I give you that solution,
Oh, Lord.
there are a lot of people that can't afford to hold on long. So when the calls come, we should try to do our best to get to them. You know, if this was the private sector, ROI, return on investment, we would have fired everybody in education from the top down because it has failed. But because we can keep pumping money and expecting nothing from it, carry on smartly. Quick solution. You ready? Write it down, Aaron and CA. Anyone in government, in the leading or opposition for sure, because we want your children to go to the public school system in the area you live. Let me say it again.
That don't
If
make no
the
sense, by the way.
rulers had to send their kids to the schools that you have to send your kids to, you would see swimming pools and tennis courts and all kind of lovely things at these schools.
Do you have
And the
anything
standard
else,
would be,
Graham?
so what?
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I no longer consult for free, and you don't want the solution. Have a good one.
Thanks very much. I'm a capitalist. I work hard for my money. I send my child to a particular school for a particular reason. And if you're saying that Anglican need to send my child to a public school, don't teach Anglicanism, that ain't gonna work for me. Allow the politicians who have the money to send them to whatever school they want, whatever school they can afford. I understand that fairy tale what the whole world should be, but it ain't that. So I can't entertain fairy tale words.
I don't want to disagree with you, but I'm going to be forced to, because the politicians are the ones that have the power and the authority to create the world we want. It's the same thing with charity versus structural reform.
You are saying that all the schools in the United States, all the politicians and all the people need to go to public schools.
No, I don't turn to the United States for example
That's
on
okay.
education.
That's
That's very important. But we don't turn to the United States.
Let's call someone in the Caribbean that's closest to us that we must turn to. Someone that we can relate and say we have similarities. Just someone that we can relate to now. Go ahead. I go quiet for 40 seconds.
In this instance, I don't think we necessarily need to start there with the regional centering, right? We center the region, that part of your discussion, on building the culture of the space. But let's go and look for successful models and then acculturate
We've been
them.
doing that for decades now.
I know. We'd be doing that for decades if our paycheck is not dependent on the success of our policy ideas. These people get paid just for putting the paper on the boss desk. Their pay is not based on the success.
So you're trying to take their pay from them.
No.
You trying to confuse me. Every time I try to interpret what you're saying, you go contrary.
What I am saying is that the politicians have the authority to create the world that you say doesn't exist.
You trying to say Glennis ain't doing a good job? Martin, Hannah, sorry for just going to Glennis.
What I am saying is that with all of the efforts, sincere efforts are being put forth by the people within the Ministry of Education.
So they ain't doing a good job?
They're not doing a good job.
Professionals, we import all kind of people. Write papers and they be implement, because I know Ms. Hannah has implemented things again and again. Jeff Lloyd has implemented new things again and again. They're going all the way to what that place is they always comparing us to. Singapore.
I don't know why they compare
I don't know why they want to do it. They always going to Singapore
these
and say, this is the best thing since sliced bread we implemented. They working. But you're saying that no matter how hard they work, it's just inadequate.
The policy ideas are not being implemented properly.
We're doing the best we can.
No, we're not.
You're saying all of them incompetent.
I didn't say they were incompetent.
You
I'm
mixing me up.
saying
Either they incompetent or they good.
I'm saying that what is being what is manifesting appears to be a lack of political will.
So it's the politicians causing this, not the schools. Let's go to the caller. Go ahead, caller.
I mean, I
Caller.
could say it if you
Go
don't
ahead, caller.
reiterate it.
Quality days of this shit dark in a ways.
Morning, Bruno.
Go ahead,
Along
Bremen. Go with
with
the
you all.
solution.
When one have the mic to be insulting people on the radio, don't.
Go press the next caller there through for me, please. When you have the mic, it really could hang up people on this, right?
You know, because normally you don't sit there.
True. I
'cause
try
just
to
hold that
be
seat.
nice and then move on. But go ahead, caller. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, CA and Ellen. Aaron, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, so one of my solutions would be charter school types. Or government fund, government give a certain stipend to homeschoolers or those who homeschooling to encourage them to, because they produce good grades and they produce good students. And so government could take some of that funds that they're pumping into the
Let's
public schools.
pause. Let's pause because I like that. But you suggested something that is not factual. That the smaller schools are producing good grades. Oh, we know the schools that are producing the good grades and they ain't the small child of the schools. It's something else.
No, I
You might have to give me an
I can
example.
call one. My kids went to a small school. I mean, South Haven on Gladstone Road.
And you saying
they
that their
produce-
students could say that all those in grade 12 got at least 5 BGCSEs.
I think all of the students, university, I can't tell you the statistics, but I can tell you that they're in UB. Most of all the students who have graduated, if not all, are in university somewhere, or at least in UB. You could check it out. You could look up their schools, but
Yeah, man.
that's just one instance. But and even if I said all, maybe not all, but the idea is that in a small environment, these kids could produce, and it requires less. So if government could, let's say, each student is average. Cost to provide for students is $10,000 each year, and the government says, okay, we're gonna redirect some of the funds. That's what they're doing in the U.S., giving parents options to go to charter school instead of public schools. So the money that they were putting into these schools, they're now directing it. So we'll give you a grant for whatever that amount. That could be $5,000, half of it, $8,000, and say, okay, y'all do that, and I think that'll take the burden off what is going in the public school. And then secondly, I think we should have magnet schools. But I think with the teachers union, the teachers are demanding more. They're working hard. The classroom sizes are too big. I think we should move in that direction. And then I'll finish up with this. I think what Graham started, I agree with him and Aaron. I think that we have to somehow demand of politicians more accountability. And while it may be out there, I think it's something, it should be in the conversation. And CA, man, you're a little upset today. I think you just need to calm down.
No, ain't upset to me.
Apology, man.
No, man, I don't apologize for nobody. You notice that? It's just me.
No, man, we got to humble ourselves, man.
I ain't humble at all. That's the God in me.
All right, sir.
Different type of religion.
Thank you, caller.
But my point is, right, we make excuses, right? And the solution that we're coming up, it can't work.
Listen, let me tell you what the solution is.
Go ahead.
Let's start right here. We're educating students. We need to center the students in the educational process. The students are not being centered. They're not the most important part of this process. It's as if there's an expectation that students that are expected to be in school all day also have the ability to go out and make sufficient money on their own to fund their own education.
Aaron, I worked when I went to primary school. I made more, I saw it when I was interviewed, I made more money than my mother when I was in grade 7. My mother made $125 a week and sent me to a private school. I can tell you it's private school, but you know what private school I went to, it's money.
Yes.
I paid her ASU. I paid some of the bills inside the house. Of course, I thank God for my stepfather.
Mr. Newry,
But let me
I
finish
don't
this.
want to diminish
No,
what you're
hold on, let me
saying.
finish this. My point is, when I couldn't afford a calculator, my mom sat next to me and she wrote strokes, and said, you can do this and pass this examination hook or crook. Because she valued education, because she could read well.
Right.
And she said, I can make sure you read well.
Listen, so two things, right? The two separate points there. No parent should be making less money than their child.
It is. That's all it is.
No, that's what it is on a plantation, Mr. Newry. Now,
It's a plantation.
Pause. I can get upset now.
What's a plantation?
Don't cause me mute you. Give me 3 seconds, Mr. Newry.
I'll give you your 3 seconds. Then you give me.
No parent should be making less money than their child can make in a after-school employment opportunity.
That's what packing boys
means
make.
That our economic system is on its head.
Well, we know
and
that.
then we go back to the government. It's fundamentally wrong, not just in the schools, but in the communities that students are living in.
Well, we started off with that.
No,
Aaron.
but let's re-emphasize it with the point that you made.
Mm-hmm.
That you, as a boy in primary school, you said.
I was in grade 7, so I was 7, 8, 9.
So you did what we would call junior high.
Junior high.
Was making more money
Yeah.
than your mother
Yeah.
in an after
She's
school
making minimum wage.
job. As a packing boy,
Packing boys make money.
did you get benefits?
No.
Were you a salaried employee?
No.
Any insurance
No.
attached?
No.
So you were being exploited.
I was exploited.
You were being exploited,
Yes.
right? Because you needed an opportunity to make money.
And still made more money.
Because your mother was your parents, your guardians were making not enough money, and you were making more money than them.
Minimum
This
wage.
is called a plantation,
So how much should we be paying minimum wage people?
a livable wage, and a livable
The
wage.
livable
should be
wage is $450 here.
Well, that's
you
the
want to
number.
give a packing boy $450?
No, a packing boy shouldn't be working. And the point is that if their parents were able to make a livable wage, they wouldn't have wage would take into account all of the costs and needs that the child is working to take care of.
So if you think gas high now, imagine giving the gas pumper $450 to pump gas.
Listen, I don't work for the Ministry of Finance, and it appears as if the Ministry of Finance ain't working for me neither.
Let's go. Because I know some bankers who don't make $450. I know some lawyers who start off at $450.
Where's that young man? Dear young man, please come show up in the studio.
Let's patch the next caller through, producer. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Nothing? Go next one, producer. Hello, can you hear me? Call go once. Let's move on. Nothing? Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good morning.
Hello?
Hi,
Go
good
ahead,
morning.
we can
How are
hear
you?
Yes, very interesting show. Aaron, I must commend you and congratulate you. Mr. Newry, he says that he asked you to tarry a bit
Yes.
while he awaited his next guest.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm wondering if you had any idea as to what he was going to discuss.
I always brief each other when we go in to discuss. You never noticed that?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you were prepared a little bit.
Just a tiny bit. And I saw the story yesterday, and I was itching to talk about it, so I hoped that there was a space to talk about it today.
Okay, very good. You're doing a magnificent job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, here's something that I want to suggest to you. We have our government schools, and the government schools are here to provide education services and et cetera, all the rest of it, to the masses. And that's why we have private versus government. And in terms, if you look at what government is expending on education and paying our teachers, and while I'm at it, let me congratulate Minister Martin. I think she's doing an extraordinary job.
Yes.
I'm hearing of all these different kinds of education and phenomenon and the rest of it being introduced just to improve. Now, I could get to the point right away. We have a nurses schooling. Something set aside if you want to do nursing. You can go into nursing. You have that, and it's broken down. You have all kinds of things. Well, tell me, why is it in education we seem to be so disjointed? We have a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit over here. Why can't we seem to stop and think from the beginning and have a teacher's education, a teacher's training program
We have that.
from start to finish?
We have
Why
that.
is it we're all over the place?
But we have that.
But I think
You do?
Yeah, man, we have that.
Tell me about it.
We have the largest school at UB. It's a teacher's after business. It's a teacher's school.
No, what's in UB?
What?
What is in UB?
What do you mean? What's in UB?
Yeah, what is in UB?
The teachers they have a whole teacher section.
UB is not dedicated primarily to teacher education. We used to have what I term the Bahamas Teachers College. And in those days, whether in San Salvador, we produced very, very good teachers. The teacher did not have to wait months and months for her particular course to come along. They didn't have to. We had what we termed primary school education. We had secondary school education. When you enrolled to be a teacher, you knew whether you wanted to do primary education or secondary education. Now, the little bit of knowledge I have on teachers on the University of the Bahamas, you have to wait for this course and the next course and the other course. Why can't we just have a program specifically for teachers?
I hear you, ma'am.
And,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think it's about this. The point that you make, the resources are there. The people are teaching the different units, the tons of different units and courses, right? It's about a lack of coordination. And these resources are not being managed properly and to their maximum potential.
You're saying the people at the University of the Bahamas are unable to coordinate what's happening now?
If we draw to her, it suggests that the teaching component is not prioritized and does not get the attention that it did when it was a standalone unit. That's important.
None of the teachers had degrees then. They had teacher certificate.
But think about it.
We have specializers now.
Think about it. In the same way that you don't center teachers in an institute for training teachers, it's the same way we don't center students in our institutes for training students. It is a cultural mindset. It's a plantation model. In fact, I can tell you my whole experience, right, from senior school to university, which I haven't completed. I don't want you all to think I'm not a king.
No.
I'm only related to the king. The whole model is that you should expect to suffer to learn. In fact, your education process will not be complete without a whole bunch of suffering. And that's straight up to UE. That rules today at the tertiary level, right? That model has to change. And that's one of the biggest obstacles to our success in academia and in education.
Let's go to the caller again. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Caller going once? Caller going twice? Caller, can you hear me? No? Nothing for them, caller? Wait, let's go to the next one. Caller, can you hear me? None of them. All the lights doing foolishness.
Those lights were only on for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next caller.
They're none of them working?
Let's try and produce it.
I see the lights. Just that nothing's coming through. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Seems like something is... Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the phone just hung up for some reason. Good morning, Miss Green. Good morning, Miss Newry. Miss Green, I love how you think. I like what you're saying. So, Miss Green, firstly, I'd like to congratulate the young gentleman from Queen's College, who was the knowledge, But the thing is, and I have O levels, but the thing is, I realized that in order for him to achieve 14, did you listen to what he went through, the endeavor, the struggle, the will? Did you hear it, right?
Yeah.
And his mom is a math teacher, so I had a cousin who went to QC. He's now a dentist, so he was very bright, and so I went to St. John's from grade 7, and so he never was like. He was a good swimmer, of course, and so he's doing well. But what I'm saying is, and I had another cousin who went to RM, and he passed a few O levels. And so what I realized is opportunities, and so we have to realize that in the government school there's a vast this disparity in the students coming in. So one of my suggestions for the solution is the same thing what they had implemented during the pandemic. The pandemic was they implemented hours, all right. And so that would help because parents who are interested in their children's education, if they see them falling behind, then what they could do is when they scan the student, they would know the weaknesses, and then the after-school classes would be designed for maths or English or the weakness wherever the student is, especially literary and mathematical skills. And so for me, when I learned about education, I heard the gentleman talk about charter schools. So when I went to St. John's, the classes were very small when I was in O levels. So normally I would have like 5 or 7 people in my geography class, about 9 people in my O-level biology classes. So and it was like, it wasn't that much people. So it is better. But the system that is proven successful is what they call a Gurukul educational system out of India. All right? The guy who knew infinity, he came from that. And so what I'm saying is, it's similar like a boarding school. All right? It's similar to that, where the students live with the teacher, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, of course, that would cost a lot of money. But also, what would help, they need to just don't implement this LGBTQI book in the school, because that is not non-beneficial, and you're adding a burden, and it's also disrupting the student's mind.
You stop them from learning.
There's no benefit for the book.
Well, listen,
even with that outlook, our children are tender age, and they have already perverted to the internet and the compilation of distractions that they have now. You know, you see, anyway, you and me was growing up. Come on, man, we didn't have all these distractions. Take for instance me, right? I had to babysit my brother and my sister. She went to St. John's from primary, but like we had to do certain things when mom go to work and Ray. And my older brothers, they were rebellious, so they was never home. But I feel as if I could have done better. Even that's why I respect the young mama those on the GC. Even though we didn't mean BJCSE, even though they dumb it down a little bit, but there's no need to take all of that.
No,
because I took them my own, and I took 2 in grade 10, and the rest in grade 11. I did pass 2 in grade 10, but what I'm saying is St. John's took 8, and I have a friend, Victor Penn, he got 4A and 4Bs. So I feel it's CVC on the same level, but it's just Victor. Victor Penn. Vincent Burton. His mother was a teacher, and so also my cousin from QC. His mother was a teacher who's a dentist. So there's an advantage to having a parent that is a teacher. So as my child get older, then I have to get back into the math because I want to be able to help her. You know, you see what I'm saying? So it's really a struggle. It's the will. So the government has to have the will to implement after-school programs for parents who are willing to let their children do that. Because the children are being distracted with too much fun. Everybody wants to have fun. And so what you learn from the guy from QC is it's a sacrifice to make.
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah, bless up. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Aaron. Respond to that.
Remember our caller, JJ, the gentleman who has fun young shacks, right? And make sure that they learn the tradition, right? When you get guys like that, I want to say morning to Leslie A. Mins, Bahamas' best soccer player. He ran a soccer program, right? And he did all the funding by himself. He found the funding. When you find people like that, then what you need is to identify people who will be tutors, right? And you say, look here, we know that these kids going to be at the soccer camp. We know they're going to be at the shack in the morning, JJ or whoever bringing them out there. Bring the tutors, right? And tell the parents, look here, if you have the time or space, come out with your child to soccer or to the shack. A tutor will be available to sit with you and or the child, with the child and or you, right? And we could sit down and you could see the child doing some studying, and then the tutor could talk to the parent about what is lacking as well and how they could support the child in those particular areas. Take advantage of what you have going on right now in the spaces that people are already comfortable in.
I see we have 3 minutes. Let's get this caller through. Yeah. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? You hang up a caller. Just in time.
Yeah,
anyway,
something happening
in the line. Okay, let's try to get this call again. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? I can see blinking. I pressed the button, caller. No, you hang up. Yep. No. Boy, caller, you can miss this. I trying again.
Hi, caller.
No, he ain't working.
And some up with the lines.
Ain't working. Mind you, I know there's an issue, Aaron. We know there's an issue, Aaron. We know that our government sends envoys all around the world every year. The last minister, this minister, they go all over the world trying to find solutions. I have a text here reminding me that our government went to Sweden, one of the richest countries in the world, where they're so rich that all the schools are private, in quote. They are private government schools because they have all the materials any private school would need. All the students have Macintosh computers. All the students have these. So they don't have to, there's no need for private schools, right? I know there are, my point is, even though we know what the problem is, the solution can't be to destroy the system we have right now and start from scratch, especially when you know that this particular thing is working for a particular set of people. We need to find a solution in between.
I mean, absolutely. We need to be able to accommodate all students. We need to be able to accommodate all learning styles, right? And all educational and psychological conditions. You need to have high-performing spaces, and then you need to be able to accommodate students who haven't made it there yet, and you need to be able to accommodate students who you know are not going to be able to make it there by building different sets of skills within them. But at the end of the day, it is a crime to allow students to leave school knowing that they have not developed the skills necessary to navigate the world as adults and to help their children navigate the world. It is criminal.
I'll let you have the last word with that. This has been Guardian Radio with the AM. I'm just hoping that parents dedicate themselves to their children. Because, learning starts first at home, then goes to abroad.
Yeah.
And clearly our parents is failing the students. It's not necessarily the teachers or the government.
Whether they are victims themselves, they are failing also.
Yes. Anyway, have a wonderful day and have a good weekend.
See how Cora eye look funny, all black up yesterday?
But she say she bumped into a wall when she's...
You see her arm was all black and blue, right?
What you saying? You think something wrong between her and Jack?
I ain't sure, but you know Jack is a jealous man. I hear him and Cora last Friday. I hear him say he hear Cora have eyes for Junior.
Now you know that ain't true. Cora is a good woman, does mind her business, take care of them children, and go to church every Sunday. So what you think we should do?
I think we should report Jack, Cora don't say nothing, but silence hides violence, and we don't want to line up in the cemetery.
Not me. I ain't getting in nobody business, then Jack come after me, and I land up next to Cora.
No, man, we could call a text Crime Stopper. And remember, we can even get some grocery money for our tip.
Remind me again, how does this work?
We can call them in Miami at 328-TIPS or 328-8477. Or when we in the island, call toll-free at 300-TIPS or 300-8477. And if you don't have no minutes, use the Crack Crime Bahamas app, and we could text them, and the messages get on mix up before it leave your phone, so nobody can know what you saying.
So what we waiting on then? Let's go earn some grocery money.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.